someone feels like, oh, it's too late to start over, what would you say to them?
Rubbish. It's not too late. From probably about 21, I was in the IT space, IT sales for years, and I shifted my career and started my own business, in my 40s. If I wanted to change now, I would happily do it again. And it comes back to that: what's keeping you stuck? Embrace every single day, which is why why I wrote the book, why I'm passionate about helping people live life to the fullest. When you are at work for 80,000 hours of your life, you have to at least enjoy that, because it's a waste of a life otherwise. And I actually realized that dyslexia was a superpower, and it just meant that I am more creative in other areas. And now you might have seen on my signature, I have something that says, made by dyslexia. Expect curious spelling and curious ideas. So, I like the reframe and the rewiring to think about, well, how can I look at this as a superpower? Both my sons are dyslexic. One of my sons autistic and has attention deficit. He sees it as a superpower. A lot of people would say, well, what if I fail? And it's like, well, that's a limiting belief. How would you shift that to enabling belief? Well, what if you succeed? And fear is good to protect us, to keep us safe, but also we have to embrace it, have a conversation with it and say, I hear you, but let's give it a go. Let's see. So again, how might we be able to dip our toe into the water to test something? I think about failure as just a lesson. So one of my other talent themes is an activator, which means I jump in, often with 2 feet. So I'm quick to act. And then if it doesn't work, I go, oh, well, never mind. My positivity sort of brushes it off. And then I'm high what we call maximizer. And it's like, how do I make it better next time? So I often say to people, my whole life is an experiment. I live by experiments. And it's like, if you don't try, you will never know.
Hello to everyone. Today we will explore career transitions, burnout, and meaning at work, and how to feel unstuck when fear, doubt, or even culture keeps us small. We will look at what holds people back from changing jobs. Today I'm welcoming Charlotte Blair, a Gallup Certified Strengths Coach and founder of the Strengths Partners. For more than a decade, she helped leaders, teams, and individuals move from feeling stuck to truly thrive. Charlotte's work is all about making growth practical, human, and sustainable, even in times of pressure and change. Hello, Charlotte. Welcome.
Thank you very much for having me. And isn't change ever present and around us all the time?
It is indeed, absolutely. How come, I know that you're from UK, we were just talking earlier, how come Australia?
Well, we came out here on holiday a number of years ago, and I worked at the time for Verizon, the big global telco, and I had an opportunity to move my roles here, and it was really same job, different view out the window, and we realised once we got here that the weather was warmer. People were very friendly. There was a lot of space, and there was not a lot not to love. So I had the opportunity to take a transition, a working visa out here, and then pretty quickly we got out here and didn't want to go back. So yes, it's definitely home now. Born in England, but I would definitely call here home.
Let's get started with something that I think we're supposed to explain to our listeners what actually it means to be a Gallup certified coach.
Sure. I first had the opportunity to discover my strengths back in, I think it was 1999. And I remember looking at the report and going, yeah, this sounds like me. But I didn't really sort of do a huge amount with it. It wasn't actually until I went on the Stephen Covey 7 Habits of Highly Effective People course that got you thinking about what your mission and purpose in life was. And if I think about all the things that I really loved doing and how I wanted to be, thought of and recognized, my 80th birthday, it was not necessarily to be a great IT salesperson. And the person that was running the course at the time was the same person who introduced me to Clifton Strengths, many years before. And I said, I think I want to do what you do. I don't think I want to sell IT anymore. I think I want to facilitate and coach and help more people. How do I get to do what you do? And he was like, well, you need to go and get some, coaching accreditations, maybe a facilitation accreditation. And that's exactly what I did. So I actually started with an ICF qualification. So it's International Coaching Federation. And then I kind of re-looked back at my strengths and went, oh yeah, I'm somebody that likes making things happen. I'm somebody that loves bringing people together. I'm somebody who loves leading in the absence of somebody else. I'm somebody who really loves focusing on the positives. And this is this kind of key piece here. Clifton Strengths, the tool developed by Gallup, is all about focusing on what's right with you as opposed to fixating on what's wrong with you. And hence
actually,
that
it's
kind of
based
like positive
on the
piece.
strength, not on the weaknesses. Am I right?
Correct. Yes. I mean, if we were to define a weakness is just something that gets in the way of success.
Yeah, exactly.
So I'm an activator. I was just sharing with you sort of, pre-show, I was sharing with you, I'm an activator, but I'm also high communication. That can mean sometimes that I just have verbal diarrhea. I don't know what's going to fall out of my mouth. At school, every school report said Charlotte talks too much. So, one has talent. It's only a strength when we're using it in a productive, wise way. Otherwise, it's acting as a weakness. If we're just like talk, not letting anybody else get a word in edgeways, that can be a weakness. So, but it is all about how you harness the natural talent, how you naturally think, feel, and behave. For me, talking. And then how do we harness that into a strength so we get the near perfect performance? And for me, the more I found out about it, the more I loved it, the more I wanted to work with it. And now I have 11, 12 years later, I have the opportunity every day to work with either other coaches, coaching and mentoring them, or teams, individuals, organizations, helping them focus on what they do best and living more fulfilling, happy, engaged, productive, and profitable lives.
So what exactly first pulled you towards strengths-based coaching, like the meaning of it?
I think it's the positivity bit. So when I decided that I wanted to make a shift in my career and go, I don't want to sell IT anymore, I want to move to coaching, that was when I sort of re-dug out that report and said, focusing on the positives and focusing on what's right with people sounds common sense to me, sounds meaningful, plays to my strengths. I'm all about the philosophy of let's not try and fix things. Again, at school, I was terrible at spelling, terrible at maths. Now, there's no point in sending me on lots of different remedial, how to get better at maths courses. I'm 53. I'm never going to get any better at maths than I was when I was at school. It doesn't motivate me. It doesn't energize me. It doesn't interest me. But I work with a lot of people who naturally see patterns in data, who are great with numbers.
So we are talking here about neurodivergence, right? Am I right, Charlotte?
Well, yes. I'm dyslexia
is the umbrella of being a neurodivergent, right?
Yeah. Dyslexia is, would fall under that, neurodiverse umbrella. So, I was drawn to it because it's all about let's focus on the positives. Let's not fixate about the weakness. Let's not, defining again what it is. Let's not focus on what we're not very good at. I'm not very good at maths and number and data. So, why force me to do that when I am motivated and energized by talking, sharing, inspiring, leading? Why not play to the things that I could do better? And the same with other people. It's like how many people, those with children, they come back with a school report. What do we look at? We typically look at the things that we got lower scores on and how can we improve that? Every performance review somebody's had, it's like, well, yep, you did a great job on that. Now let's spend the next 45 minutes talking about the things that you didn't do very well. Well, that's not particularly motivating and energizing.
So very true.
Yeah, how can we focus on the positives and navigate around the things that we don't do very well, or partner with other people with things that we don't do very well? Because we can't be all things. You end up being it's a British saying, I'm not sure how it translates, but anyway, jack of all trades, master of none, or trying to be well-rounded. That's a myth. Trying to be a well-rounded individual. You might be able to have a well-rounded team, but we don't want to be a well-rounded individual. We want to be like a star. We want to have sharp, pointy bits to us.
But
that we
and
want to
actually, I have a question, if you don't mind, Charlotte. How did you live in during your school time, like this? Being a neurodivergent, how did you live that part of your lifetime? Because I've been through that, and it wasn't so nice for me. I mean, personally.
Yeah, I think what happened is I just embraced it. So my brother was diagnosed as dyslexic, and because and his was mainly actually handwriting. I struggled a little bit at school, with spelling, a little bit of handwriting, but mainly spelling. Very practical, but not great at spelling. And because they were diagnosing my brother, they were like, well, two for one, might as well get Charlotte done at the same time. And I remember being one of the first people in the UK at the time. It was called GCSEs, the exams that you took. And I was one of the first kind of cohorts, so to speak, to get special dispensation during the exams. All it really meant was I got extra time for the exam. I think initially I would try and hide it, and I would find ways around it. I would have to think about,
Oh, so appreciate.
I would have to think about different ways to be able to spell something. So I had to be creative. A turning moment for me was actually when I found the book by Kate Griggs, This Is Dyslexia. And I actually realized that dyslexia was a superpower, and it just meant that I am more creative in other areas. And now you might have seen on my signature, I have something that says, made by dyslexia, expect curious spelling and curious ideas. So, I like the reframe and the rewiring to think about, well, how can I look at this as a superpower? Both my sons are dyslexic. One of my sons is autistic and has attention deficit. He sees it as a superpower. So I think I might have tried to hide it before. I wouldn't necessarily say it held me back. I didn't go to university, but I also don't think that held me back either. I just jumped out into the big wide world, and I did the University of Life. And he's similar. He's like, he doesn't really see it as holding him back. He sees it as just, I think differently to other people. So I am all for helping us focus on the things that we do well, and trying not to put labels. Like I know
I hate labels.
Neurodiversity is
I don't want.
it's a disability, but I like to see it as a different ability. So we kind of remove the dis and say, well, it's just a different ability. We are just wired differently. We know that we're all wired differently. I mean, even in the strengths language, there's 34 million people that have taken the assessment in the world, and there are 34 different clusters of talent themes. But the chances of you having the same, just top 5 in the same order as somebody else, is over 1 in 33 million. So we know that we all think, feel and behave very differently, whether you are neurodivergent or not. And then if you are neurodivergent, yes, you just think differently to the neurotypical.
So when, for example, someone says, I feel stuck, what do you usually hear underneath that, Charlotte?
I think what I hear underneath it and what I try and find out underneath it is two different things. For me, if I was to say to somebody, describe what that looks like, if you were to put a metaphor to that, often they're describing it like, I feel like my feet are in concrete, or I feel like I'm held back by chains, or I feel like there's something dragging me back. So it's literally that kind of like stuckness. What's behind that is going to be different for every single person. So I don't try and make an assumption of what it is behind that, because often it's mindset, it's conditioning, it's something, physical that is holding them back. But I have felt stuck myself, in particular in my career. And there is often more than one thing that is keeping somebody stuck. And, mindset is often one of those things.
Can you please give us some examples what those things might be, like in our daily life?
When I wrote the book Career Unstuck, How to Play to Your Strengths and Find Freedom and Purpose in Your Work, I found myself doing a fair bit of research and talking to different people that felt stuck. It came about because I was doing a coaching engagement with a big global organization. And I asked the question, on a scale of 1 to 10, how much do you love your job? And love's a very strong word. A lot of people sort of get a bit thrown by the word love.
Yeah.
You can change it to enjoy your job. But I was floored at how many people were so low. It's like a 2 out of 10. If 10's the highest, I really love my job. So many people are a 2 or a 3 or a 4. And I'm like, wow, we're at work for over 80,000 hours of our life. I believe that you at least need to enjoy what you're doing.
Yeah, definitely.
The more I got to research and the more I got to talk to people about why that number was as low as it was, it was many different reasons. Sometimes it's what I refer to as the shitty boss, the bad boss, the boss that's micromanaging you, that's making your life hell, not always intentionally. And I think many of us have experienced that. I think, Gallup research shows that 1 in 2 people leave a job down to the boss, the manager that they have. For some people, they don't necessarily, kind of know any different. Is the grass really greener on the other side? And there's a fear factor of going out and finding out. For some people, there's, what Seth Godin would call the sunk cost fallacy. While I trained to be an accountant and I spent all these years at university training to be an accountant, and I've just spent 10 years at this accounting firm, I can't throw that all away. I can't waste that. So that's the kind of sunk cost fallacy of that would be a waste. Well, he would say that's a gift of yesterday. The gift of tomorrow is focusing on, what you feel you need to do. Something else that keeps people stuck is, well, I need to pay the mortgage. I've got to put this kids through school fees. I can't afford to change to be X, Y, Z. And sometimes that's a mindset thing as well. It's like one of the biggest pieces of research. I remember when I first started writing the book, I wanted to inspire more people to leave corporate world and jump out and start their own, company. And my book coach at the time was like, Charlotte, I don't think you can do that. I don't think you can just get people to leave their company. You've got to find out these things and, why they're stuck. And one of the big things was money. And it got me into researching, well, if it's money mindset, what's your mindset around money? Well, I wouldn't earn as much money if I did X. Well, is that a belief or is that fact? And is there a second part-time job? Is there something that you could do on the side? Could you change, your mortgage? There are so many different options around the money piece, but just sometimes people go, I can't afford to do that. And it's like, well, you might be surprised.
Let's talk about it.
Yeah. And, again, I don't want to force people to financially, be irresponsible or, not pay their mortgage or not afford to do that. But I talk to a number of coaches that go, I'm not going to earn as much money if I go out on my own than if I work for this corporate. Well, I earn more money than when I worked at a corporate. Working independently. I know lots of coaches that started their own business, have more freedom, get to have more purpose, design their day and earn more money. So again, it's just a belief that we might have of, I'm not going to earn as much money. Now, absolutely, it's a roller coaster. So it's not a consistent income. It's not like you're going to get paid for.
It's like
yes, it goes up and down. But as long as you're prepared for that, then that's okay. But what I guide people to do is, go and do some research. Have you actually evaluated how much money goes out the door each? Have you answered the phone? Sorry, have you answered the phone to that annoying person that phones up and tries to get you to change your electricity provider to somebody else? Maybe you could save money there. Do you need the Netflix, the Amazon, the whatever other subscription?
Exactly.
So, do you actually know how much money goes out and where you could be saving, money? I remember during COVID when a lot of people's business suddenly, kind of took a nosedive.
Yeah.
I actually found it a little bit exciting to go, all right, we've got to cut costs. What can I do with this, big piece of meat. Can I turn it into so many different dishes? And how could we afford to eat on a much lower income? And there are lots of ways and means of doing it, but just sometimes people use that as a excuse, maybe. Or, again, the fear of the unknown. And then I get into the whole, what if you were to dip your toe in and try something?
We don't have to project ourselves too much into the future because it doesn't bring you too many answers. So that's the thing. And I don't think it's very healthy to do so, actually.
Yeah, I find a lot of people would say, well, what if I fail? And it's like, well, that's a limiting belief. How would you shift that to enabling belief? Well, what if you succeed? Yeah. And fear is good to protect us, to keep us safe, but also we have to embrace it, have a conversation with it and say, I hear you, but let's give it a go. Let's see. So again, how might we be able to dip our toe into the water to test something? Could I take something on the side? Could I move my current role down to 4 days a week and, test out starting my own business as an example? It's like tread lightly, play, test the waters. But, it's really important to get a support crew behind you, whether it be a mentor or a cheer squad or, other people. Don't try and do things alone. When you're stuck, having other people on the journey with you to sort of corral you, pull you out, support you, cheer you on is critically important.
What could be the difference between being tired and being truly burnout?
Well, I was going to say I'm not an expert on burnout, but what I do know from other people's research and it is that being tired can often be about, kind of like overworking. Being burnt out might be that you're not actually playing to your strengths. Like people get burnt out just from being bored. So it's like I'm not having the opportunity to play to my strengths, to be at my best, and that can kind of cause, burnout or overthinking, burnout. Whereas, yes, if you are working all hours God sends and you're burning the candle at both ends, then yes, that can be tired. But I'm no expert on burnout, but I do believe that when we are working in our strength zone, when we know what those are, and most people can't identify what their strengths are. They're very good at identifying their weaknesses, but they don't know what their strengths are, which is why I highly recommend people take the Clifton Strengths Assessment to get a definitive report to say, here's how you naturally think, feel and behave. And it gives you suggested action items of how you can play to those strengths. And again, in their research, Gallup find that people are over 3 times as likely to report having a great quality of life and over 6 times as likely to be engaged in their job. And we see less burnout when people are playing to their strengths. Now, your strengths, but like acting as weaknesses, can go rogue on you if you let them, and that can cause to burnout. There are 2 talent themes, strengths. One's called responsibility and the other one's achiever. And when those 2 show up together, they can cause burnout because one's about, taking ownership, doing what they said that they were going to do. And some people just say yes to too many things, which can cause burnout. An achiever's all about setting the bar high, liking to get stuff done, tick list, feeling satisfied when they do lots. Well, you let those 2 go rogue on you, it's going to lead to burnout. So it's just about understanding how do we adjust the dial accordingly so that our strengths don't manifest themselves as weaknesses. But again, everybody's journey is different. So it's just saying, when do I notice that I feel I'm not at my best or I feel like I might be getting to that burnout stage? How can I spot it quicker and ask for help?
I also noticed that so many people, capable people, still doubt their own value while they're at work. Why do you think they do so?
Well, that probably comes down to, a lot of upbringing, maybe the experiences they might have had in their school life, experiences they might have had in early career. Only takes one person to say, you're stupid or you're not capable. And then we start believing those voices that we hear once. I think we also need to listen to the positive voices that we have. So when we think about somebody will hear one thing negative, but they might ignore the 10 things positive, and we get fixated about that one negative thing. So, how might we go and do some research or look in I love the term about the brag file. When you receive a positive bit of feedback that you've done a really great job, hold on to that. So those moments of doubts that you've got, you can go and look in that file and go, yeah, I did that well, and I did that well. But otherwise, we get overly fixated on the one bit of feedback that we had that you didn't do very well with that one. And then the whole imposter voice starts going on our head, oh, I'm no good. And again, we've got to go, is that fact? Is there an actual fact behind that, or is that just the story that we're telling ourselves? And I talk about the book that the cast in our head is a bit like that movie Inside Out. I'm not sure if you've ever seen that kids movie Inside Out, where the little girl's got these little voices in her head, and Mr. Angry, and so it's like we've all got a cast inside our head. And it's trying to make sure that we're listening to the wise one that's going to help us. Exactly.
It's like a story. Our brain tells us a lot of storytelling. And people, they are still not so very aware of that. And as you just mentioned earlier, precisely, I do think we have to pause sometimes for 1 minute, for 2 minutes, for 5 minutes, or whatever that timeline might be, but still doing it, because it's so important to understand where you are, where you're at, etc. Standing on what are your strengths and work on those. What are your weaknesses as such, in order for you to identify them, knowing that are those, and then find a way of focusing actually on those that actually brings you more happiness and more fulfillment. So how do we tell the difference between a hard session or experience of our life and a wrong path, do you think?
Well, I was going to say that this is going to be very individualized, but I think it's a gut thing. I think we all have gut reactions, and I think we need to kind of listen to that. If we go, I really think I'm on the wrong path, then it's okay to keep going down the wrong path for a little bit longer, but at some point we have to just sort of change it. So I also go, how long can we sustain the hard path? So as an example, I'm coaching a leader at the moment, and they're going through a massive amount of change, and she keeps saying, yep, January, I'm going to give it till January. It's a really hard path at the moment, burnout, working long hours, but she will know whether it's the right time to kind of move. But I think sometimes we have to put a deadline in place and going, how long is this going to go on for? And and I think about asking her questions, and it's like, well, how's this impacting you and your health? How's this impacting the kids? How's it impacting your husband? What's the knock-on impact that it has? What's the weather that you're carrying around with you? So, we all have hard periods in our lives. But yeah, if the path is no longer the path that served you, it's okay to take a different path.
What is the fastest way to start getting unstuck?
Well, first of all, you got to work out what it is that's keeping you stuck. So, for some people, that's a harder thing. And as I mentioned at the beginning, for some people, that's a number of different things. So if it's the bad boss, if it's the mindset, first we've got to identify what it is that's keeping us stuck, and then start to make some paths to get unstuck. And for some people, yes, discovering their strengths helps them. Knowing their values helps them, thinking about what's most important to them. I think a big one for me, and a lot of people sort of, push back on this one, is understanding what your why is. Like, I love Simon Sinek's work about, discover your why, or, kind of understand your why. What's your purpose? And when you think about purpose, it doesn't need to be a grand, I want to save the world, I want to cure cancer thing. It just can be
also in the short run, because otherwise you put too much pressure on you, and of course it becomes or might be that you will have the burnout, and that's the thing. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, for most people, it's I want to make a difference. I want to have an impact. So whether you're making coffee for somebody and brightening their day, or whether you are developing a cancer drug, that helps with that. Most people want to do something that makes a difference. So, identifying your why is a big thing. So, there's a number of different paths to getting unstuck. But first, you've got to go, what is it that's keeping me stuck? Is it my own mindset? Is it somebody else? And then there's lots of different paths to get unstuck. Anybody can Google Career Unstuck, Charlotte Blair. I wrote this book to be a little bit more like a choose your own adventure book, because it's not a book to read from cover to cover. It's like, well, that bit doesn't apply to me. I want to know about that bit. And it's full of activities and exercises that help me get unstuck, help so many other people I know get unstuck. You know, things like Simon Sinek's Know Your Why is in there, the three-legged stool, the values sort. There's lots of different activities. And I wanted to make it a bit like a kind of workbook. There's other recommended reading of other books. If you want to think about burnout, you know, I recommend, you know, Mello's book on beating burnout. Yeah. I'm not the expert on all those things, but I've recommended other experts that are. If it's your money mindset, you know, sort of Jackie Clark wrote a great book on that. And then I've got lots of sort of coaching questions in there to kind of go reflect and ask yourself that question. I wanted to make it practical because everybody's journey is different of what's keeping them stuck and how they get unstuck. So it's like a choose the path that's right for you.
How can knowing your strength, our strength personally, change the way we handle failure?
Well, that would depend on your strength. So it's like, I handle failures. When you ask me the question about dyslexia, I go, well, I don't know that it really had a major negative impact on me. I think because I'm quite high positivity.
Yeah.
And I think about failure as just a lesson. So one of my other talent themes is an activator, which means I jump in, often with 2 feet. So I'm quick to act. And then if it doesn't work, I go, oh, well, never mind. My positivity sort of brushes it off. And then I'm high what we call maximizer. And it's like, how do I make it better next time? So I often say to people, my whole life is an experiment. I live by experiments. And it's like, if you don't try, you will never know. So
yes,
I just test and learn, test and learn, test and learn.
This has to be a mantra.
Yeah. Now that works for me, but it doesn't mean to say that it's going to work for everybody else. Some people want to go and do their research. Some people want to, evaluate all the risks first. Well, people's route to failure is going to look different. Mine, I'm all for giving it a go and seeing what happens. And I also believe in little experiments, like the whole human-centered design thinking principle of if you're going to fail fast and fail cheaply.
Yeah, exactly.
But actually, my biggest lessons are through my biggest failures.
What simple tools or practices help people thrive in work they actually enjoy?
Well, I think it's about evaluating what parts of your day you do enjoy. And I often think about this as just a 2-part list. Write a list of everything that you're responsible for in a week in your job. And go, these are the things that I dislike and don't enjoy, and these are the things that I enjoy or love. And kind of, write that list and have a look at them and go, all right, am I the things that I love doing, enjoy doing, and typically is when I'm playing in my strength zone. And the things that I don't love doing is the opposite, when I'm not. And I'm a big believer in job crafting, especially if you work in a team. And there's been many a team workshop that I've done, and we kind of, had this exercise of, trash and treasure. What's one person's trash is somebody else's treasure. Mm-hmm. So I remember working in a team one time, and I was sharing how I didn't love the peer review process. Being dyslexic, I didn't spot errors, and I was like, oh, I hate the peer review process when I've got to review somebody else's document. Mm-hmm. Somebody else in my team said, oh my God, I love doing that. Give me your work. And I'm like, oh, absolutely. And then somebody else in the team said, I hate doing the induction when we got all the new starters, joining. Oh my God, that drains me. And I'm like, well, I love doing that. Give that to me. Mm-hmm. So it's just even having either a conversation with your manager and saying, these are the parts of the work that drain me. Is there any way of, thinking about how we restructure this, or having a team conversation? Everybody creating a 2-part list, there might be a great trade that you can do. And everybody then gets to job craft. It's like when we apply for a job, most organizations, they're looking for the, purple unicorn. I remember a friend saying to me, the purple unicorn, they don't really exist. They're putting their wish list out of everything they want. And people look at it and go, well, I don't have that. I don't have that. But invariably, there are things that you can do. So when you apply for something or you get through to an interview stage, it's like, can you craft that job so that it matches what you love doing? Because that employer is going to get you at your best if you're doing the things that you enjoy and that you love and that you're good at. Now, we all have parts of our job that we don't enjoy. I don't like doing my accounts, but I have to do it. So, some things we've just got to suck it up and get on with it. Other things we might be able to outsource, but other things we might be able to trade with somebody. And I love this concept of job crafting.
So again, as I just mentioned earlier, that you helped teams move from friction to flow. What usually creates that friction in the first place?
I see a number of things. It's often down to communication. That people are either just not communicating with each other or making assumptions based on words people are using. So assumptions can be a big one. Another one might be trust. Everybody, builds trust, has a different trust barometer. Some people trust instantly. Other people takes a long time to build trust. So there's something in there about, understanding and having a discussion about trust. And then working in silos is what I also call a kind of conflict friction creator. When you have teams that end up, working in silos, they do their little piece of it, and they don't often sort of, broaden their horizons, go and talk to somebody else in a different department, and that comes back to the communication. But often it does come down to that communication piece. And the fact that everybody, as I mentioned earlier, thinks, feels and behaves differently to each other. That whole 1 in 33 million, you having the same top 5 strengths as somebody else, 1 in 33 million. So we make an assumption that somebody else thinks the same as we do. When we say close a business on Friday, we've got to ask more questions and validate, well, what do you mean by that? What does that look like to you? You might finish at 3:00 on a Friday. I might not work on a Friday. I might be in a totally different time zone, but you've assumed I meant your time. So again, we make so many assumptions. And how might we communicate and ask better questions and clarify things? Easier said than done, I find myself in the same boat of, having friction and conflict. And I go, no, why is that? Well, I might made an assumption that somebody else understands the same meaning in something as I did.
But again, I return to one thing that I have mentioned earlier as well, that we have to learn / relearn how to stop, pause, and reflect upon it. And that means also asking ourselves a simple question: why I'm thinking that? Is it just an assumption, or is it based on a fact? Exactly. That's the thing. We can really start with simple things, like literally just stop, pause, learning to do that, and doing very often, or more often actually. And from that point, just asking ourselves one question: why I have this feeling or thought or whatever that might be, and you will get the answer if you are totally honest and open to it, of course.
I agree totally. Is it fact, or is it a story that you're having in your head? And I joke and often say in a workshop, I don't know that anybody wakes up in the morning and says, I'm going to go out my way to make so-and-so's day hell today. And some people question me on that and go, I don't know about that one. But again, that's the story that we tell ourselves of they're being awkward just to annoy us. Well, we don't often know what else is going on for them. Like, I love the iceberg as that kind of visual metaphor or, kind of picture of the behavior that we see, and we define behavior as things they say and things they do. That's all we see, but we don't know what's going on below the iceberg. The biggest part of the iceberg is under the water. So what's somebody's mindset, what's somebody's beliefs, what's somebody's attitude, what's their skill, what's their experience? We don't always know that, and the best way to find out is to ask questions. And the best questions are open questions that engage somebody in a conversation. So, when we are assuming, then we need to sort of, validate and ask better questions.
And what is one thing leaders can do to create that flow more often?
I think exactly that. Ask better questions. I think the number one leadership skill for me is coaching, and coaching fundamentally is about asking questions, and open questions. So not the have you, should you, could you, did you, would you, which are all closed questions. It's the what, when, why, how, where, and the evaluative exploratory questions, and peel back the layers and the onions and find out, because the more we ask, the more we get to find out, and the less assumptions that we make. So my biggest tip to coaches is ask more open questions.
How do strengths show up differently across different cultures or workplaces?
Well, cultures, I mean, Gallup over the years have gathered data on this and found that there were some differences in cultures, but they don't publish that data anymore because sometimes people were using it in the wrong way of saying, oh, right, well, all Koreans are high harmony. Well, you can't, say all are high this. So there are some differences across cultures. I do notice differences in workplaces. So I used to work a lot with a sort of actuarial firm, a very sort of, pensions, numbers driven organization. And they did have a certain makeup. And I was always curious to say, is that their recruiting policy? Like, are they looking for people that think like that? But by the same token, I work with a government body that's all about road safety. And they are all very much about, kind of having empathy and helping people and looking to the future, less about the past. Well, they are, that's the nature of the work that they do. So I do see clusters within organizations, and often it's driven by, the culture, or driven by the top, or sometimes driven by recruiting processes, that we're looking for a certain type of person. I found it really interesting. I was doing work with one organization, and we were looking at their high performing female talent, and they were all showing up with a very similar talent profile. And it was an interesting observation for them of going, are we looking for all talent that's kind of, loud and confident versus the quiet, deeper thinkers as well? Because talent shows up in many different ways. So sometimes when we look at the data, I would say data is just data. It's the stories behind the data that's the most important. So I think sometimes when we see strengths patterns in cultures, be it organizational or not, it is interesting to have that conversation of, where is that coming from? But quite honestly, we see such a diverse range. To me, it's more about leveraging the uniqueness that's in there, leveraging what people have got, versus trying to read too much into, this organization's like this because it has that. That makes somebody that's profile is very different feel a bit more excluded.
What actually makes work and belonging feel so hard sometimes?
Oh, that's a good one. Belonging is a very emotive thing, isn't it? I wrote a blog post on this recently, and it got me reflecting. You're talking about reflecting of, a moment where I didn't feel particularly safe and that I didn't belong, was about, some of the cliques and clusters that can sometimes exist. And it's a little bit like the conversation we were having before in an organization about friction and flow. When we're working in silos and it can feel exclusive or excluding other people, then that sense of belonging doesn't come in there. But it did make me reflect. Well, again, that's based on my own strengths profile. I'm somebody who likes a wide group social network. And it made me wonder, is that because I feel safer in numbers than I do in a smaller group? So again, I think that one's so very individual of what makes somebody feel like they belong or makes them feel like they're excluded. I'm a big lover of the David Rock's SCARF model. And he talks about, the different needs that we might have, the social elements that we might have. And one of those is relatedness. And it's like, can I connect with you? Do I feel like I'm not related to you as in, you're my brother or my sister, but can I feel a relation with you because we're both female, or we're both from Europe, or we both support the same football team, or, what's that belonging piece that makes us feel connected? And often it's about having those conversations, asking those questions to find out what does belonging look like to each person.
Mm-hmm. How can someone stay authentic while adapting to a new work culture?
Yeah, I'm writing down a couple of things here because a couple of things have sparked from what you said there. The first one is that word authentic. Like I can't be anything but authentic. And I love that quote by Oscar Wilde, be yourself or everybody else is already taken.
Yeah.
So it's like, I think we just have to stay ourselves. I think this piece about, the chaoticness or adapting to new cultures I think it's about learning to say no a bit.
Yes,
we feel
definitely.
a pressure to take on an awful lot. But if you say, what are you saying no to that enables you to say yes to something else? Or are you setting the culture of, oh my gosh, I'm going to be on all hours? Especially when you start a new job. Some people say to me, yeah, but I need to stay late because I'm a new job. And it's like, no, I think you need to start as you mean to go on. And it's like, I'm not saying leave early, but if you set those expectations that you're always going to be staying late, you're setting yourself up for that burnout yourself. So I think being able to say no or not yet, or the word I wrote down here again is curious. So it's a bit like you were saying about asking those questions. So, how can we lead with curiosity and ask the questions? Again, somebody says, oh, well, I need this by 5 o'clock. Okay, well, what happens if I don't get it to you by 5 o'clock? If I was to get it to you, 10 a.m. tomorrow morning, what would be the impact of that versus, yes, of course, I'll get that done. So I think we can put a lot upon ourselves. I like that, when you get on an aeroplane and they say, put your own oxygen mask on first. That's very true that we should be doing that in a workplace as well, like looking after ourselves, putting our own oxygen mask on before we start, sorting out everybody else's, because at the end of the day, your health is your health. And if you're burnt out, as we were saying before, you're not being at your best for you. You're not living your best life. You're not being the best for your kids. You're not being the best for your spouse, your partner, your family.
Exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
correct.
Yeah.
So we have to look after ourselves. And I'm not saying that everybody listening to the podcast should go around saying no to things, but are you questioning, does this really need to be done right now? And is there an alternative? And having a discussion about it. I don't mean getting into conflict or friction, but being curious, communicating and asking better questions.
But again, saying no or not now, it doesn't mean that you are creating precisely friction or misunderstandings or whatever. Actually, you are clearer. That gives you more time to also evaluate and also understand so many things about you, because we have so many shadows that still are so unknown. And stop and pausing and asking yourself those those questions like, oh my gosh, where did this come from? And it's like, is it true? It's a real fact again, or it's just like my random mentally diarrhea that starts again to pumping up into my head or into my life on this moment. I don't need it. Thank you, but no thank you. In that sense, you can actually self-talk with yourself. That's the thing. It's not a wrong thing to self-talk. Actually, it's a good thing.
There's another book that I've got on my bookshelf here by a friend of mine, Karen Stein, and it's called Be Your Own Leadership Coach. And it is.
Absolutely.
It's like coaching yourself and having that conversation. So yes, having a coach is one thing, but you can coach yourself.
So what roles does community and connection play in career courage, like being courageous?
This is a very hot topic for me. Community. I run a community. I lead a community, I'd say. I bring together a community, interesting enough, of other coaches that do exactly what I do around the world. And I'm super, super passionate about helping other coaches, because I think together we achieve more. And when we think about, that courage in your career or courage in your community, doing things when you have other people around you as a sounding board. The community that I lead is called Connect, Learn and Share. So it's like, how do we connect with each other to support with each other? How can we learn with and from each other? And how can we share resources that lift each other? So whether it be in your community, in your workplace, in your career, I think community and having a cheer squad and people around you is critical. Trying to do things alone is really, really hard. And knowing that other people maybe feel the same way as you do, have those little voices inside their head, have the little imposter syndrome. Am I doing this the right way? When you're surrounded with other people that go, yep, I feel that too, and this is how I got over that is critical. So yeah, it's the hill that I will die on, talking about community and connection and having support. And again, in the book where I talk about having that cheer squad or a group of mentors, like go and find a mentor. And the thing about mentors is also be prepared to pay for them. Like, why should mentors always give their time for free? So
exactly.
Don't expect, if there's somebody that you go, I really would love to pick their brains, expect that you might need to pay for that, because they've gone through an awful lot of training and have a lot of wisdom. And how do you value and honor their time around that? So that's the only other thing that I would say about having people to support you. Be prepared to have to pay for it sometimes.
What is one myth about success that you wish we will all unlearn? Because
I mentioned it earlier. It's about being well-rounded. I wish we would unlearn to be well-rounded. People say in schools, oh yes, we want to be well-rounded. In an organization, bosses will say to you, we want you to be a little bit more well-rounded. I think that's a myth. I think when we can play to our strengths, shine like a star, we perform much better. So I would love to dispel that myth.
If one, it makes me laugh because it also touched me personally. If someone feels like, oh, it's too late to start over, what would you say to them?
Rubbish. It's not too late to start over.
Way.
I was going to say it's never too late.
Definitely.
I think I get really excited, and it depends on what you mean by start over. I get really excited in two things.
We talk about career, so
in a career,
a new career path, having a career change, or thinking to start over a new career, but they are afraid, they're stuck, it can be so many things. It's
never too late. Yeah, there are so many examples of people that have started things later in life. The community that I just mentioned. There's 4 or 5 people in that community who are now retired from their, previous jobs, and this is, what they might call their last chapter, but I actually doubt it's their last chapter. And it's like, I want to make a difference. I'm starting my own business. I'm doing a coaching thing. I've left the corporate, but people can change jobs at different ages. I mean. Okay, so I was 40 something or other when I shifted I've been in pretty much IT sales most of my life. I worked with horses before that, but from probably about 21, I was in the IT space, IT sales for years. And I shifted my career and started my own business, in my 40s. If I wanted to change now, I would happily do it again. And it comes back to that, what's keeping you stuck? Do you want to dip the toe? Or are you going to jump straight into something? But if you're going to jump straight into something, have a cheer squad. But my advice would just be, it's never too late. You can start something new at any time. Yeah. Just embrace life. I learned this morning actually that a close friend of ours back in the UK had been involved in a car accident and unfortunately passed away. And I go, every day there's something that happens that reminds you of live life to the fullest. If you want to do something, it's never too late, because you never know when you won't have the opportunity to do it. We never know when our time is up. And I don't like to sound morbid, and I'm incredibly sad that this friend lost their life. But when it happens, it's incredibly sad for everybody involved. But it's happened. So how can you embrace every single day? Which is why why I wrote the book, why I'm passionate about helping people live life to the fullest. When you are at work for 80,000 hours of your life, you have to at least enjoy that, because it's a waste of a life otherwise. So
absolutely,
it's never too late to change. Okay, so yes, it might be too late to go and train to be an astronaut, or there might be physical things that get in your way, or They don't let people into the fire brigade. I don't know this, but they might not let people into the fire brigade after the age of 60, or you can't be an air hostess after the age of whatever. So there might be some, I don't know, restricted limitations, but if there's not a sort of legal restrictive limitation, then it's never too late.
I have a last questions, which is more as a note to your past self ritual. I call it like that. If you could go back and sit with the younger self, the version of you, for example, just starting your journey into coaching, what would you tell her?
I would tell her two things. The first one would be visible. Like, people, as an independent solopreneur, kind of coach, you can't expect to find people if you're not visible and people don't know where to find you, is the first one. The second one is expect a roller coaster. Like, for me, what I would tell myself is expect the ups and downs, and mainly in the ups and downs of revenue. Like, it's very rare to have that consistent monthly income. So expect that and get comfortable with that would be the two. But yeah, things that I wish I had done sooner is I wish I'd written more blog posts sooner. I wish I had been on social media sooner. I wish I had made it easier for my ideal client to be able to find me, because everybody's not necessarily, searching for your website. Yeah. So how can you help more people find you? Because invariably the work that we're doing is to make a difference. And, who are we depriving the opportunity to work with if they don't know where to find us? There's probably quite a few things. Those are the two key things, but I'm like, test and learn, like experiment. But, I guess that's what I did. I guess I was thinking about that question, what would I do differently? But otherwise, I'm actually quite happy with the journey that I took, because I did test and learn. I did experiment. I did get a cheer squad. All the things that work for me. I guess the other thing that I would probably say is, well done, keep going.
I'm so happy that you have accepted my invitation. You make me really fulfilled, like literally, because it was very important for me to have you here today. I have searching for you and looking for you, for your background, professional background, and you as a person for quite a lot right now. And I really wanted you to be here with us and share your personal and professional experience with me and with the listeners. I think you are extraordinary.
Thank you for sharing that, and thank you for having me on. As I shared at the beginning, I always love talking.
So if someone wants to reach out to you,
number of ways. LinkedIn is always a good one. So if they can connect. I'm an open connector. Anybody connect with me on LinkedIn. Send me a message on LinkedIn, Charlotte Blair. I was going to say there are not many, but there is a female football player here in Australia that's also called Charlotte Blair. We sometimes fight for Google search and analytics. So unless she's injured, then I come up first. The other place would just be to go to thestrengthspartners.com or charlotteblair.com.au. But if you sort of Google Charlotte Blair Strengths Coach, you should be able to find me. Okay, I would be very disappointed with the Google algorithm and my SEO if I didn't pop up. Just don't search Charlotte Blair footballer, because then you'll get Charlotte Blair the footballer. Or there is a wrestler in the US called Charlotte Blair as well. So Google Charlotte Blair Strengths Coach and I should come up.
Thank you so very much, Charlotte. Thank you, and have a lovely day. Thank you again.
Thank you.
What we can take from today is that feeling stuck doesn't mean we have failed. It often means our strengths are knocking at the door that hasn't been opened yet. When we learn to name them, use them, and ask for what we need, work can become less about surviving and more about actually living. To everyone listening, if you are doubting yourself, questioning about your job, or wondering if it's too late to change, maybe the problem isn't you. Maybe it's just time to meet your strength in a new way. So if you want to reach Charlotte, you can find her on LinkedIn, Charlotte Blair, or at charlotteblair.com.au. Read her book, Career Unstuck. Please support Rewire to Rise by subscribing to the channel. It will mean a lot to me. Until next time, stay sharp.